Welcome to the Co-Host Bros Podcast, where we break down everything short-term rentals, entrepreneurship, and building a profitable hospitality business. Whether you're a host, investor, or property manager, we share real strategies, real insights, and real experiences to help you scale smarter and grow faster. Let's dive in.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 95. We're the only people to ask questions off the fly. My name is Matt Codd. I'm here with Austin Spitzenberger. We are the Co-Host Bros Podcast. Today we have Mike Kitko in the house. What is up, Mike?
Hey, great to hang out with you guys. It's been a long time coming. I'm glad we created some space and some time to be able to connect.
Yeah, man, super happy to have you here. I know I'm familiar, and a lot of people in in the short-term rental space, mostly in the entrepreneurial space in general, are kind of should be familiar with you at this point, or have at least come across your content. But man, if they're not, give us a quick background, a little bit about you, and kind of what all it is that you do.
Yeah, so I guess the short, brief notes made long. I'm a recovered Fortune 500 executive leader, a former Marine vet. So leadership's kind of always been in my blood. And in 2016, that chapter closed, and within 20 months, I had lost two high executive level positions because my family was upside down. So my wife was in pharmaceutical addiction. I was drinking at toxic levels. Our home was a battlefield. There was so much conflict going on, and so much just so much hatred in our four walls and under our roof that everything collapsed. I couldn't lead myself. I couldn't lead my family. I couldn't lead my businesses. And when that chapter closed, a whole new one opened. Because when I started thinking about I was going to enter the entrepreneur space, what's the only thing that I've ever loved doing? And the only thing in corporate and in my Marine experience is developing people and developing teams. And I do it at a very, very high level, a world-class level. And the stronger the leader, the stronger the business. And as the business leader grows, the business grows itself. And I work with leadership teams in the local St. Louis area. I have a mastermind called the Inner Wealth Mastermind that's coast to coast. I do a lot of speaking. I've done some speaking around the country in real estate, investing, and business acquisition spaces. So, and the one thing that I've recognized is the more the leaders invest in themselves, the more the lid grows, right? John Maxwell called it the law of the lid. But as the leadership grows, they open up higher level of capacity for wealth and success and happiness and freedom. And the reason I told you about the family falling apart is because I also help the leader keep the wheels on all of it, not just success in the business.
Wow, man, that's a lot. I'm trying to think, like, if we're going back in time, what do you think was the first step in your journey to kind of correcting everything while you were in this dark place, and maybe you and your wife and your family was falling apart? Take me back to that time, and like, what was the first thing that you fixed? Because me personally, what I realized, it was alcohol for me, right? And
Yeah.
once I dropped alcohol, that was the first thing I needed to do. And it wasn't all this transition at once. It was one thing after another. It was alcohol. Then I added the exercise. Then I added the reading. And it was a slow progression. And I'd like to think that I've come a long way, kind of like you. So walk me through that journey. What did that process look like, and how to become like kind of the best version that you are today?
So you don't join the Marine Corps, right? You don't walk past the Army recruiting office and the Navy recruiting office and the Air Force and recruiting office and get to the Marine Corps office because you like taking the easy path, right? So where you say you added a little bit at a time, there's a book called The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. It's a great book. If you guys are, there's Atomic Habits, but The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson's also equally powerful, simple and easy to do, or easy not to do, as Jeff says. But I added, like, literally, and there was an attempted suicide in my story, right? I actually put the barrel of a gun in my mouth and considered, I was seconds away from killing myself, but I didn't have the courage. And when I didn't have the courage to kill myself, I knew something had to change. And I read a friend of mine at the same time. You can call it synchronicity or whatever. But he sent me a book called The Slight Edge, and I read it. And what it says is, if you just do the same thing every day over a long period of time, just disciplined habits. You don't have to go all in on anything, but if you just repeat habits consistently over a long period of time, you'll start to get extreme and exceptional results. And Austin, at that moment, I got out of the chair when I was reading the book, and I came downstairs and exercised, which I hadn't done in years. I literally did. I spent 4.5 years completely sober. I started reading every day. I started meditating every day. I hired a coach myself, a life coach. He was more of a spiritual coach, not religious, but spiritual, because it's the same thing. Life coaching and spiritual coaching, it's the same thing. But anyway, the point being is I added all these disciplines and routines, because if you think about it, when a rocket is leaving the Earth's atmosphere, right, it takes off from the Earth, it uses 80% of the payload of the fuel in the first 20 miles just getting out of the Earth's atmosphere into gravity, right? And then after that, it uses 10% on the way to wherever it's going, and then it doesn't need a whole lot of fuel coming back. But the point being is, I needed to do something pretty aggressively, so I added all of them to my life all at the same time, and that started to break the monotony of this lifestyle that had broken me. Right. And I also, instead of trying to focus on fixing my wife and getting her out of her pharmaceutical addiction, I focused on fixing me and solving my problem, because I was trying to lead her without being able to lead myself. And when I literally collapsed all of my focus onto myself, after 3 months, I was evolving and growing really, really rapidly. And she wasn't, and she was fighting me, and she was attacking me. Right? She just wanted me to go back to the old Mike, and I filed for divorce, and it didn't end up happening. But from that, we rebuilt our marriage, and we rebuilt everything. And she's out of her addiction, and we're not toxic anymore, and we have a lot of love in our home. And the reason I tell you that, and this is why I focus on, when I'm working with executive leaders or entrepreneurs, you can't fight a war on two fronts. You can't fight a war at home and at work. So I needed to solve me and get some peace at home before I could do anything substantial or exceptional in the world. And after that peace and harmony took over at home, and there was no more of a combat zone, that's when I went out and started an entrepreneurial venture, and it took off pretty quickly. And in the first year, my first full year in business, I exceeded any salary I ever had in corporate America. Because when you get in your zone, of genius, money flows, man, because profit follows passion.
Yeah. So let's elaborate on that a little bit. So what would you say? Give me your short answer on kind of, well, it doesn't have to be short, but what is your zone of genius? What is it specifically that you hey, this is what I do, and this is it?
So develop people and develop teams. So like I said before, and I was just having this discussion with a leadership team today. One of my strengths is I don't see where somebody is, and it sounds weird. I don't see the person where they are right now. I see the person that I'm working with at the highest level of their potential, and I speak to that. I don't speak to where they are. And my wife laughs. She said, because that shit's gotten me taken advantage of a lot, because I refuse to see somebody's deficiencies or their flaws or their weaknesses. I'm like, no, I'm going to speak to the king, and we're going to, you're going to step into dominance. I'm not going to speak to the fool, because if you speak to the fool, you speak to where they are, man, they're going to stay there. So building people, helping them recognize their potential, listening for limitations that they're applying for themselves, reframing their thoughts, reframing their mindset, reframing their perspectives in the world, reframing how they see the world is going to help them step into a higher level of themselves. And that's just a person. And with the team, man, I can spot talent from a million miles away. And I built some really powerful teams in corporate America that basically put me out of business because I no longer had a job because the team was functioning at such a high level. And that's why I do leadership development with teams. And it's not just about going out and helping them build a team, but it's helping them sharpen and develop them.
Okay, so let's say what does your ideal client look like? Like what does it look like for you to come into a business and be like, I know I can help you specifically. Like I will solve your problem and it will make wonders for your business. Like what does that look like? Like what are some things you identify in businesses where it's like, hey, this is some examples of some problems that I solve.
Yeah. So let's say I'm not going to solve any problems. They're going to solve them.
Sure.
I'm just going to support them. I'm going to guide them. They created the problems. They're going to fix them. I can't fix their problems, but I can help them spot them and help them become the people capable of solving those problems, if that makes sense. So this isn't a consulting gig where you go in and you solve a company's problems and you get out and now they got to figure out the rest for themselves. I just work with the people to be able to spot the problems, to be able to identify them, to solve them. But from a leadership development perspective, it's more about the power of their leadership skills. Like today with the leadership team I was working with, it was all about emotional intelligence. And for instance, there's one leader in the business that is kind of a newer leader and is kind of conflict avoidant. And she's struggling to hold her team accountable. And I had a conversation with her, and all conflict avoidance it's not about fear of conflict. You don't like the feeling you get when you're it's all emotional intelligence, right? For somebody who doesn't like conflict, it feels violent. Having a direct, honest, transparent conversation, raw conversation, they don't like the way it feels. So it's not that the conversation is volatile or hostile. It's that the feeling they get is uncomfortable. So they step back instead of step forward. And when you become emotionally intelligent like that, in the Marine Corps, they didn't teach you not to have emotions. They taught you, hey, you're going to feel it. Go forward anyway. Feel it and go forward anyway. Run in towards the sound of combat because that's where the win is. And with leadership, it's about when you can't have a direct, honest, transparent, vulnerable conversation with one of your employees, it's going to be hard, really difficult to help them get results. People need to be told what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. And that often takes us having a sense of emotional courage to be able to be willing to step into that battle. And that's what I'm talking about, developing leaders. Now, I probably just saved that gal's career from a leadership perspective, because if she couldn't have direct, honest, accountability conversations, her career wasn't going very far, right? And it's just spotting those little things, listening for them and helping them walk past, right? What are your values? What's your culture, right? What are you settling for, right? Who's the person that is making the excuse instead of solving the problem, and helping them identify them. And just step by step, week by week, they get better, and so does the business.
Yeah. No, I think and I almost think like you hit it pretty good where it's like your level of success is also one of the main factors is your ability to have tough conversations.
For
And
sure.
what I've learned personally is that like I wouldn't say that I'm bad at it by any means, but I would say that I continue to get better at it. I feel like it doesn't ever get that much easier, but you just get better at it. And you have to realize
Yeah,
that, like, hey, in order to actually move the needle, like, you have to be able and willing to have those hard conversations. Because if you don't, the result that's going to come from that is going to be significantly worse than the temporary uncomfortability that you're going to have while having that conversation that needs to be had. Right.
for sure.
I don't think
And
people realize that either.
go ahead, Matt.
I'm sorry. I don't think people realize that either, right? So if you're avoidance of having that tough conversation, it's going to cause you to have more tough conversations than you would have had in the first place. It actually creates more of an issue than people don't understand. And so you don't have that tough conversation. And then now you have other people where you need to have tough conversations, and they're acting up because the other employee didn't get the tough conversation. And then
Yeah.
it's just rolls downhill, right?
The poison in the
And
culture spreads. Yeah.
well, I was gonna say, and it causes. I feel like that is also a root of like anxiety within people. It's like you're anxious and nervous because you know that you need to have that conversation and you're avoiding that conversation. So when you get it over with, that weight that's going to be lifted off of you, I don't know. It's just, I feel like it's very crucial, man.
And oftentimes the employee, the right employee, wants to have that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
The right employee wants to be told how they're performing. The right employee wants to hear that. They don't want you to withhold it, because they'll be like, holy shit, how long have I been doing this? And how long have I been missing? And what the fuck are you doing? Like, why didn't you tell me? They want to have it. The wrong employee doesn't want to have that conversation. Right. And that tells you everything you need to know. And again, I'm gonna take it back to, I want to make sure we're really identifying why these things happen. It's because of a lack of emotional intelligence. These are nervous system dysregulation issues. And you said, who's the ideal client? The ideal client for, a leadership leadership is just any leadership team that wants to level up. But for my one-on-one client, it's really I'm the leader behind the leader. Like I am the coach of the business owner for those leadership teams. And then in my mastermind, it's really just people that are working on self-mastery and working on leveling up, like, understanding themselves at a deeper level, learning more, a higher level of emotional intelligence. They want to do it in a community-based setting.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I've been in leadership for about 20 years, and leadership's an ever evolving skill. Right. And some things don't get easier. It just ends up, you still get that feeling. I still feel the same way when I got to fire somebody or, reprimand them. It's not that I feel bad about it, but at the same time, it's like something a part of you makes you like, a little uneasy about it, but you just have to do it because, you're just going to rip the Band-Aid off. It just is what it is.
Yeah. And guys, there's this Marine veteran part of me that it isn't really conflict avoidant and really enjoys a good spar every once in a while, right? So, stepping into that arena and having that conversation, knowing it's going to be uncomfortable, but it needs to be had, and demonstrating the courage to have it, right? And stepping into the fire. Part of me kind of loves that. When I was in Marine Corps boot camp, I remember vividly, and it doesn't, to the average person, this sounds friggin' heartless, but our senior drill instructor said, listen, you do not have permission to die for your country, but you do have permission to kill somebody else for theirs. If it's between you and them, it's them. You can't even wince. Right. And that's kind of like in business, it's not that cutthroat, but it's like when you're the business owner, you owe it to yourself and the business to have those conversations. If it's between you and them, it's got to be them. If it's between lack of results and lack of performance and them finding a new position, they need to find a new position. And you owe it to yourself. You owe it to them. You owe it to business, your business, and you owe it to your employees.
Yeah. Yeah. People don't see that. I don't think they realize that, what you do affects your team. So if you just don't deal with one hard thing. And I think everybody's constantly trying to learn leadership, especially a lot of people on here who are building their businesses and hiring VAs and creating teams and things like that. What kind of advice would you give people who are like working with virtual teams when it comes to like leadership?
Yeah. A relationship, the medium doesn't really matter. It's just how you build the relationship and the trust that you have with each other, right? Both individually and with your team. And again, going back to that, it was just today, so the recency effect's taken over. The team was talking about trust a lot, trusting each other. And I said, I want to move to another level of trust. And it's not that you trust the person. You trust their intentions. You understand that their intention is pure. And these are things that we have to anchor. We get to anchor as business owners. We get to anchor into our culture that, listen, here is the intention of why I'm having this, why I'm going to have these conversations. Here's the intention of why I'm making these decisions. Here's the intention. And as long as you trust my intention, then you'll trust me. And I might not have your commitment, but at least I'll have your compliance, and we can move forward, because I'm seeking compliance or commitment, but I demand compliance, right?
Yeah.
That is required. And that's really what we want. But with the right people, we want as many of them committed to the same vision as possible. And
Yeah.
if we need to pull everybody forward because we just need them to be compliant, then we're not a leader, right? We're just a manager and authoritarian.
Yep. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit. So tell us about the real estate investing that you do in Missouri, and I don't know if it's other places as well. Tell us a little about it.
Yeah. Well, I am not an investor. I fund a couple businesses.
Okay.
How about that? Fund a couple deals. I own a couple share of a couple businesses. I invest financially, but I don't invest in real estate. I know my zone. I stay to my zone, and I let everybody else do the same. The reason that I'm so ingrained in the real estate investing community is because 10 years ago, I met this guy named Brian Schroeder in the local St. Louis area, he's like the godfather of real estate investing in the area. And he already had a huge community, and I became his business coach, and he put me in front of his group, and then everybody started, knowing me and get to know me. And then people started pulling me to other RIAs and other meetups, and it built from there. So I don't actively do any real estate investing outside of fund some stuff, but yeah. The real estate investing community seems to know me, and there's a big, larger conference every year here called Gateway to Freedom, and I've keynoted every year. So there's, it's just, that's the way I've become known in the space.
That's awesome. So with the struggles and everything else, like that you went through with your wife and yourself, and the toxicity and stuff, like, is there any kind of maybe advice you can give someone who's dealing with that right now? Like maybe the first thing they should do to, either get help or try to make a change or something like that.
Yeah, Matt, the one thing that I got wrong, bro, is when my wife, I used to think that my wife was toxic because she was in pharmaceutical addiction and all this stuff. And what I realized is there's never just one toxic person in a toxic relationship. And I had to start owning my toxicity, and I had to start owning my role in it. And there's a book, especially for us guys, it's written for everybody, but for guys, it hits hard. And it's called No More Mr. Nice Guy. And it's all about moving from being a nice guy to being kind. And kind is making decisions that the right decision, regardless of the judgment of others and the wants of others or the desires of others or the influence of others, and starting to follow our instincts and our intuition and make the call. And moving from a nice guy into who was a people pleaser, right? And a recovering people pleaser, into being kind and just knowing the direction my life was headed and making the decision to go that way. That's what moved the needle on everything. So my wife, I'm gonna pimp my book. This is my newest book, Inner World, Outer World. And she wrote the first foreword in that book. And she said, I wouldn't stand up to her. I could stand up to people in corporate America, but I would never stand up to her. And she said, the first time I ever stood up to her, she said she realized, how could I expect and trust that he would stand up for me in the world when he wouldn't stand up to me at home? So it was like taking back my power and not letting my wife dictate my life. And when I said I was going to start a business, she's like, the fuck you are? You go get a job, right? And I'm like, all right, if it's between me and you, it's got to be you. And that's when I filed for divorce, right? And that sent a clear message. Listen, you are no longer in control of my life. You have influence, but you don't have control. And when I started doing that, everything started getting better in my marriage, because she started to trust me. She started to see me. She started to recognize my power and my potential instead of the weakness that she always saw, because she could say 2 words and break me in half and make me angry. And now I started taking control of my emotional awareness and my emotional regulation, if that makes sense. And now somebody says the most hurtful words, and it doesn't even hit, because I'm regulated within myself, and I don't need the approval of people outside of me.
Yeah. So a good tip for everybody: send your wife divorce papers. No, I'm just kidding.
That is not what I'm saying.
If you're at rock, if you're at like a rock bottom state, maybe.
Yeah, just warning shots. You know.
Yep.
You know.
No, the message there wasn't to
Just kidding.
file for divorce. Right? I hear a lot of people say that when I tell them that story. The message was, that's how I reclaimed my power.
Yeah, for sure.
That's how I reclaimed my own identity and my power within myself, my sovereign being, that I own my life. You don't own my life, even though there's marriage papers.
Yeah, and move all your assets to a trust first, guys. If you do that, anyway. So is your wife still involved in the pharmaceuticals, or like not obviously not doing them, right? We've already discussed that, but I mean, like in general, like as occupation, or is she just working with you now, or is she entrepreneur herself, or?
She is. She's a real estate agent. So
Okay.
so she's not an investor, but she is a real estate agent. She kind of just stepped into that arena. So it's
Awesome.
fun to see her lit up. In our business, we have 4 workshops a year, and we have 2 retreats with our mastermind. She does all the event planning and all the event coordination for that. There are no pharmaceutical drugs in her life. She's completely clean. Her health is, I mean, she goes to Pilates 5 times a week, and she's stronger than me. And she really is the strongest person I've ever met. That lady has rebounded. In fact, on my podcast, we are doing a 10-part series called Unbreakable. And it's our story about how our life collapsed, our lives together and individually collapsed, and how we rebuilt everything. So right now we're actively doing that. New episode drops tomorrow.
What's the podcast name?
The Inner Wealth Podcast. I'm not very creative with the names. My business is Inner Wealth. My podcast is the Inner Wealth Podcast, and my book, Inner World, Outer World. I kind of stay close to home.
That's good marketing. That's okay. I mean, you just got to put it everywhere. So did you ever think that at this point in your life, you would be in the place that you would be, being how, some years ago you had a gun in your mouth, ready to just do it?
No, man, I was in survival mode. I was just trying to make it day to day. I never in a million years dreamed that I would have no alarm clock in my life, that I would completely own my time, that I would completely own my day. The thing for me that I cherish most is I say yes when I want to say yes, and no when I want to say no. And if it feels like an obligation, it's a no. And that is freeing, man. It's liberating. And I spent almost over 20 years in corporate, just doing shit that I didn't want to do, going places I didn't want to go, working for people I didn't want to work for, because I didn't feel like I had a whole lot to offer this world. And now I do. And now I see the evidence of that everywhere, whether it be podcast downloads, whether it be, people on my social media, whether it be people buying my books around the world. It's really cool. I'm literally waking up to make an impact, not just survive. I never, ever in a million years back then could have predicted being here.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. Like I have a question like on your podcast. So what is the general, is it mostly like having guests on it, or is like, what is the theme of your podcast, and what is the message that you're trying to serve to your audience for your Inner Wealth podcast?
Own your life, man. Own your life, right? I'm not a hustle whore and a grind guru. I've never said the words work harder to anybody in my life, right? It's that there is hidden power inside of you that you just haven't unleashed yet. And we get to go in episode, not episode by episode, but I just give a lot of, and it has changed from the beginning until now. Like, I think we're getting ready to launch episode 238 tomorrow. And at the beginning, it was very much focused on entrepreneurism. And now it's very much focused on just reclaiming that inner power, that inner sovereignty, that your personal authority over yourself, and owning your life, calling your own shots, and finding freedom within yourself and creating freedom outside of yourself. Because the concept that when I heard it, it was what I was after my whole life, is if you don't own your time, you don't own your life. And as entrepreneurs, I think that's really what we want most of all. We want to own our life, and we want to own our time.
Yeah, absolutely, man. What's one thing you see, whether it be working with teams or with clients, that's like there's always like not always, but there's a common theme or a common overlap or a gap if you're working with entrepreneurs? What's one thing you got a group of, let's say, 10 entrepreneurs right in front of you and they need Mike, they need their help. Is everybody's situation different, or is there like one or two things that you see often where you're like, man, this is a common theme with entrepreneurs if they could fix this part, or is
Yeah.
everything different? Get what I'm kind of asking?
Everybody's different, but I really do think it all comes back to the same thing: nervous system dysregulation. I really do believe that. And it's just what part of you is dysregulated. Like, my first book was called The Imposter in Charge. And the imposter syndrome is just a nervous system that is still living in the past in an old identity. So now that you've entered a new journey or a new chapter in your life, your nervous system's still living in that old identity. So this new reality doesn't feel, it feels like a lie. Does that make sense? Your insides haven't accepted and adopted absorbed it yet. So it's not inside of you. It hasn't really, you haven't embodied it yet. And that's just nervous system dysregulation. That's all it is.
So how do you
The,
combat that? Because everybody has imposter syndrome, right? So like to some degree, depending on the room that they're in, they have some form of imposter syndrome. So
for
is
sure.
there anything? How do you combat that? Like what's the best way to handle or deal with that? Because I think realistically, like anyone that says they don't have imposter syndrome is lying. I mean, that's my take. What do you think?
So I'll share this. There's 8.22 billion people walking on the planet. Not one fucking person has it all figured out. Not one person really knows what they're doing. Nobody knows what they're doing. Day to day, we have no idea what's coming. We live in an uncertain world. There's challenges that are going to show up that you don't know how to solve. There's obstacles that you're going to face that you have no clue that they're going to come. So you have no idea how to anticipate them and how to solve them. And when they come, you feel like an imposter because you couldn't predict it. You don't know how to solve it. You're living in some unknown territory that you think you're looking at everybody else and you're comparing your back office to their front office. And in reality, nobody's got it all figured out. And as soon as you do figure something out, especially in the entrepreneur space, tell me how many times you've changed your business or your focus or whatever because you learned what you needed to learn, you achieved what you needed to achieve, and then you stretched in a new direction where you needed to become somebody different in order to achieve that next level, right? So as soon as you do know something, you wipe the slate clean and go somewhere where you don't know. So now you're entering new territory, and that's uncertain. Entrepreneurs especially don't settle for certainty and for stagnancy very long before we move the needle, we move the bar, and we need to become somebody completely different in order to achieve that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think like some of the times where I've had imposter syndrome would be being around certain people that maybe like in my head I've made bigger than what it is. And then I start talking to them and then I'm like, man, like you have accomplished a lot, but you're really at the end of the day, you're not much different than me. You're just maybe a little bit farther along. And I can be
No.
in that seat. Eventually I'll be in that seat. But in my head, I'm making out like the day to day you think of like, man, dude, if I could just be like so and so, if I could just to get to this many units
Yeah.
under management, or if I could just get this much profitability, and then you like, I want to be like so and so, and then you're like, well, once you get to know so and so, it's like I've always realized like I'm not that far off from you, man. You know?
Yeah. Look, I'm not that big of a deal. People know me a little bit, right? Got some name recognition in the local area, especially. So I go places and they might, investors primarily, they know me and hey, you're Mike Kitko. And that's pretty cool. And sometimes that, it's surprising and delightful. But one time I was on a call right after I released my first book, The Imposter in Charge. And I got a buddy, a self-mastery coach buddy up in Canada. And he wanted me to send him a box of books. And I did. And he's got a mastermind as well. So they all read the box of books or the book. And I jumped on a call with them. We were on there for about an hour and a half and we jammed. And man, I bring the intensity, I bring the fire, and we jammed and it was awesome. And I lit their asses on fire. It was awesome. And afterwards, I got a call or a message, And it was this guy, Robert. And Robert was one of his students. And Robert said, "Hey, Mike, it was really, really great. That time was awesome. Thank you so much. I learned so much. I really appreciate it. And I hope it was okay that Alvin gave me your number." And I said, "Yeah, man, thanks for reaching out. It's really cool. It's appreciated." And he said, "Oh my God, I can't believe you responded." And I was like, I called him. "Who the fuck do you think I am? Who the fuck do you think I am? I wrote a book. You're putting me on a pedestal. Why would I dismiss you? You think I'm more important than you? You think I'm more significant than you? Whatever pedestal you got me on, you better get it off, because when you find out I'm imperfect, you're really going to be disappointed at me, and I did nothing to create that. I got bills around the house that need to be paid. My kids fight and argue. I got projects I got repairs that need to be done to the house. Whatever like identity you've assigned to me, please take it away. We're equals." And one of the things when we're talking about imposter syndrome, one of the things that I eventually convince people is, you are the most significant person on the planet, just like everybody else. There's nobody more significant than you. Achieve more, maybe. Accumulate more, maybe. Right? More success, maybe, but not more significant. And I think it's cool to step into that, regardless of where the results are.
Yeah, that's hard, because it's funny, because it's like, I'm sure that there's people that listen to our show and see us on this big hill. And it's like, I had somebody reach out to me last week who came to Houston and was like, "Hey, you want to meet up? I like your podcast, whatever." And we went and hung out and had a couple beers, whatever. It's like, I don't have a problem with that. You're just a person. I'm just a person. Like, there's no difference between you and I. We both bleed the same color. You might have, and you know what? Actually, he taught me something that I didn't even know. And I was like, cool. Like, and it might sound dumb to me, but I use Relay as banking. I didn't realize that I could send invoices. I mean, I pay my cleaners through it, but I didn't realize I could send invoices to my owners through it. I was doing it through QuickBooks or whatnot. And he's like, "Yeah, this is how you do it." And to me, it was like, oh shit, I never even realized that. I've never looked on the computer part. I will look at the mobile phone app. I don't, get on the computer. So it's like, I think in any situation, no matter where you see somebody, you can learn something from them, and they can learn something from you. And yeah, it's hard. Yeah, like you're saying, like the imposter syndrome. And you see people that, like, they could, like how you're saying, people meet you and like, "Oh, hey, you're Mike." Like, it's like, and you're flattered that they know you, but at the same time, you're just like, "Yeah, I'm just Mike." Like, it's not
Just Mike. That's it.
right.
You're just Matt. I'm just Mike. And I stopped putting people up on a pedestal a long time ago, man. And I just won't let anybody do that to me.
Yeah.
I just want to feel equal with everybody. I'll tell you a real quick story. And this is before I wrote The Imposter Syndrome, before I really knew exactly how to articulate it. But my good friend Brian, right? He had 150 doors, single family doors. At that point, he had 12 million on the street in a lending company. Now he's got upwards of 28. He was building, he was probably flipping. He had a wholesale business. He was flipping somewhere around 180 houses a year. He had built a team, big freaking deal in the area, right? And after that, it went up to like 300 deals a year. And, it just like, he blew up, and it was awesome. But he asked me to be his business coach, because I've got this corporate level experience. I've sat in the C-suite. I've sat at the desk, at the table, at the captain's seat. I managed a $65 million manufacturing plant. I've managed a $350 million manufacturing plant. I was calling the shots, and he saw something in me that I still hadn't seen. And he said, "Mike, I want you to be my business coach." And my answer, fuck off. What am I going to teach you? You built this. What do I have to teach you?
Yeah.
I haven't built that. You have. What do I have to teach you? And he asked me 3 times. And the first 2 times I told him to fuck off. But then when I finally stepped into it, I'm like, I got a lot to share with this guy. I've got a whole different. Have I built 150 single family home rental portfolio? No. Do I have a lending business? No. But I've got experience that he can benefit from. And I think we all have something to offer other people. And I have gaps that I ask for help to fill in, and I help other people fill in gaps. And there's nothing flawed or defective about anybody. It's just, we're teaching people from our genius. we're helping them in their gaps, and then we're doing the same with other people, and that's how we all grow. But nobody's got it all figured out.
Yep.
Nobody. Not a single person on the planet.
Yeah, like a caveman just came and was like, "Oh, this is how we make fire." It's trial and error and figuring out things together and getting collective knowledge from people. That's why networking is very important, and all those kinds of things, because it's like I talk to Austin all the time. I learn things from Austin all the time. I don't know if I teach Austin anything, but I learn things from Austin all the time. But I mean, everybody I talk to, I learn something from. So I think it's like always try to learn from what other people have to say. And I think you have a lot to share with people, and I think because when he asked you to be your business coach, that was kind of like a sign to you. You just didn't see the sign yet until it kept smacking you in the face, and you're like, "Fuck, I probably am good at this."
And sitting in those conversations with him, sharing big picture corporate worldviews that he hadn't tapped into, he didn't have access to. That's when I really got to see it. But if I wouldn't have entered that conversation, I wouldn't have seen that. Matt, I want to speak to what you just spoke. What we're talking about here, recognizing that and accepting and embracing that we don't have it all figured out, and that nobody does, that creates humility, right? That creates humility in a human being, saying there's things I don't know, and that's okay. And there's people that have knowledge that I need, and that's okay. And I'm going to pass on my knowledge, and I'm going to request knowledge from other people. That's humility. And there's I'm going to struggle to remember his name. Patrick Lencioni has a leadership book, and it's called the A Player, or the I'm struggling to remember the name.
Bunch of them.
Yeah, he does.
He has a bunch of good books. I've read a couple of them.
It's called The Ideal Team Player. That's it. Patrick Lencioni. And he boils it down, the ideal team player. And I find this about entrepreneurs or just being a good freaking human being comes down to three things: being hungry, being humble, and being smart. And the humble part is the ability to ask for help when you need it, to be able to say that you don't have it figured out when you don't. And the things that you have figured out is don't think you're better than somebody else because you figured them out, right? Pass them on. And that's humility.
I've read that book.
It's freaking awesome.
I didn't read the book. I didn't pick up the book. Like, actually, senior leadership made us read the book. But then I was hoping they would act on the book, but it didn't really work out that way. But I mean, I got a book for free, and I did enjoy the book, and I read it probably over a weekend. It's probably the fastest I ever read a book. Because when you said that, I had to think about it, because it was like probably 10 years ago, and I just Googled it, and I was like, oh yeah, I did read this book. I didn't expect it to go the way that I thought it was going to go in general.
Yeah.
Like I didn't realize it was just like a whole, like, it was just seemed like a bunch of stories like about people in general. So I didn't expect it to go that way, but it was a very good book.
That takeaway, hungry, humble, smart, that's come up in every friggin' leadership conversation I've ever had when they're trying to assess their employees. Hungry, humble, smart. If they're not humble, they're not coachable. And if they're not coachable, they're not going to grow, right? They're not going to allow you to help them.
For sure. So Mike, I really thank you for your time. I have another question to ask you. I want you to tell everybody like what your daily routine is like and what your non-negotiables are.
Yeah. I'm not a hustle, hoard, grind guru. The same things that kick-started the momentum are no longer like really part of my daily discipline. But I spend a lot of time in, especially in the morning. I was up at 4:30 this morning. My wife wakes up somewhere around 8. So I've got about 3.5 hours of complete isolation and complete solitude and complete silence. And it's all about just tapping into another level of internal power and internal wisdom. And that has been what's really accelerated my life, is understanding myself at a deeper level. And from that window in the morning of just absolute peace and absolute understanding, and continuing to ask myself questions to level me up. Where are my blocks? What am I scared of? Why am I scared? What are my limitations? Where do I feel I'm falling short? Where do I feel like I'm succeeding? And just asking myself all of these questions, and a little bit of journaling, and just the self-awareness has really accelerated everything. Workout still part of my life. It's not as regimented or disciplined as it was before. I don't eat a bunch of shit in my life. I've added back a couple beers with my wife. We enjoy our life. Our relationship started on a bar stool, so we go and connect on a bar stool, but it's not toxic. Nobody freaking passes out, and nobody gets into anger, and there's no anger and emotion in that shit anymore. It's like a healthy add back. Yeah, and honor my schedule. Except when I schedule time with you guys the first 2 times, and I had to reschedule. So yeah, please forgive me. But I don't have a whole lot of doing in my life, Matt. And for a lot of people, they don't understand that life. I feel that I'm 53 years old, and for the first 43 years, I was a human doing instead of a human being. And the older I get, the more mature I feel I get, the wiser I feel I get. I'm stepping into a state of being a human being and not just a human doing. It's not about activity for the sake of activity. It's the right activity that's inspired for the benefit of not just myself, but everybody involved.
I think I'm going to name this episode Be Not Do. No, I'm just kidding. No, that's solid, dude. I mean, it's solid, and it's like, I really do appreciate all of the stuff that you shared. I feel like it's going to be very helpful it was helpful to me. I know it was helpful to Austin. I know it's going to be helpful to plenty of people out there. It better be helpful to you guys, or you need to listen to a different podcast. Maybe you can listen to Mike's podcast. So Mike, you could just plug your podcast, let everybody know where to find you, your book, and all those things. And
maybe they can listen to both of them. Maybe there's not a reason to pick between them. Maybe they can listen to both because they're both valuable and beneficial. And I want to go back to, before I do that, Matt, thanks for opening that invitation for me. But before I do that, this isn't about not doing anything. It's realizing that there are people that are doing a lot out of obligation and never feeling the satisfaction and the real joy of life. They're expecting to get somewhere and feel like they've arrived, and they never arrive because they've never taken time to enjoy any aspect of life. They feel like their joy or their success or their fulfillment is somewhere else, and it's in the future when it's right now.
Destination. Like it's a destination that you just arrive at. I'll be happy when. Right?
It's called destination fatigue, right? And then eventually we freaking burn out, and this is when people go into an identity crisis. But this isn't about not doing anything. I do stuff in my business, but it's about learning how to be more, enjoy being more than just doing. And for people before I go into the podcast, I'll say for people addicted to chaos, peace will feel like boredom. So they'll shift back into chaos because they don't know how to handle nothingness. They don't know how to handle not having a to-do list. When they're addicted to adrenaline, peace it'll leave a hole, and your body will try to get back into momentum because it'll feel boring. You don't know how to live a peaceful life. That is what you're chasing through your results. You're chasing that peace that is available right now. You just won't let yourself have it. Now, the Inner Wealth podcast, it can be found on all the platforms. It's also on YouTube. Right now we're doing my wife and I are doing a 10-part series called Unbreakable. And it's talking about rebuilding our relationship. But I do have a few interviews on there, not a lot. A lot of them are just mic drops. It's just me jumping on a microphone for 20, 25 minutes and just freaking jamming. And here's a concept that I'm working through. Here's something that I'm unpacking, and I'm just going to light your soul on fire. Get in, get on, get off. And here's a mind vitamin for you. 238 episodes, 59 countries, 1,700 freaking cities around the world. So I feel like I got a pretty good reach, and it just feels good making an impact on a daily basis. 2 books on Amazon, The Imposter in Charge and Inner World, Outer World. Inner World, Outer World was released on my birthday, August 19th last year. And it's all about the journey of self-mastery, all right? And how to become the human capable of living a truly exceptional internal life, not just internal life, not just external.
Dude. Yeah. Well, I think you have 2 new listeners to your podcast, so we're going to subscribe. Thanks, and Mike, dude,
thanks,
we totally appreciate you coming on. I think it was killer, and it was a nice change of pace of what we normally do. We're normally interviewing people who are within the short-term rental space, but it's nice to change it up. And I'm glad that Austin did, because I've been tossing around some ideas that I kind of want to throw Austin's way about different guests, come with investing and opportunity zones and things like that. So I appreciate it, Mike. You were a breath of fresh air, and I know that you provided so much value to everybody today. So it's like, dude, thank you. I really appreciate it, man.
Well, guys, thanks for having me on here. It was an honor. And I'll say, if you guys ever need a little kick in the ass every once in a while, just from a mindset perspective, just the answer is yes. Just ask me to be on, and the answer is yes. All right. It's my honor, my privilege. I don't live a super hectic, busy life. So likelihood is I have space and time when you do.
Awesome. Well, thanks again.
All right. Thank y'all for listening. Peace.